there. I'm Shalini, your host for today's session on the eLearning Champions Pod. And I'm thrilled to have with us Joan Capua, who's a senior manager L&D at Taylor and Francis. Joan is a seasoned professional with over 25 years of experience in leading financial, advertising, and publishing firms. And her demonstrated achievements through her professional career in HR, corporate training, and sales uniquely position her to offer a multidisciplinary approach to all aspects of performance management. And Joan excels in creating and also facilitating programs in management, influence, priority management, consultative selling, and professional development. And Joan has played a pivotal role in Taylor and Francis's transition to a remote working culture. And Joan holds certifications in Myers-Briggs Types Indicator, the DISC profiling, Francis Covey's five choices to extraordinary productivity, and 360 profiles. And Joan is affiliated with the ASTD, the Human Resources IQ, Professional Society for Sales Training, and the National Speakers Association, amongst others. So, Joan, a very warm welcome to you and a very warm welcome to our listeners. We are very thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you, Shalini. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. So, Joan, you have a very interesting profile, and a lot of those certifications are a lot to do with really, the psychological aspect of dealing with people and teams and building leadership and so on. So, I would really love to have your insights on some of the questions that are very common to L&D and time permitting, maybe some insights into, your very unique challenges when it comes to those specific areas as well. Right.
Thank
So
you.
let me get started with the first question for today, which is to do with aligning training with business goals. So, Joan, could you share something about the importance of aligning learning and development initiatives with your organizational goals and priorities?
Absolutely, Shalini. Actually, even more than alignment, that is our foundation. The overarching mission that we have at Taylor and Francis, our 200-year-old company, is foster human progress through knowledge. So that
Right.
foundation drives all of our organizational goals and priorities, and it's the foundation for any learning and development initiative that we do build.
Right. So that's kind of, as you said, if it's your foundation, that must be deeply ingrained in every person who's in L&D.
Yes,
Yeah, because we hear
absolutely.
a lot of buzz around these words, especially in recent times. But from what you're saying, that's been a solid foundation for you all along.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. With all of our publications, we provide the greatest value, most of all, in sharing understanding across the world through knowledge.
Right. So, coming to the really identifying the training needs of your people, what strategies do you employ to
Yes.
not just identify these needs, but to really tailor your solutions to meet the diverse requirements of a very multi-generational, multicultural workforce?
Absolutely, Shalini, and that is an excellently posed question. We have a multi-pronged approach to how we identify and analyze feedback, not only through the lens of learning, but we also look at the larger context, assessing levels of satisfaction overall within the organization. And that's the starting point for considering learning needs. We monitor the results of our frequently held pulse surveys. We also do informal surveys and polls to again assess the broader context of overall satisfaction. Many themes, challenges, and requests do surface in the workshops that I lead. So I carefully monitor those and make sure I record them so that I can address future needs. In L&D, we also liaise closely with our HR business partners, who are kind of our first lines of contact with each of our business lines to stay on top of changes, initiatives, challenges, and of course, considerations of our regional cultural nuances. To your point about diversity, we want to make sure that we are honoring all cultural nuances. And in terms of generations, I have a different perspective on that, Shalini. I
Mhm.
believe that rather than try to ascribe certain traits to generations, why don't we go deeper and assess them as individuals? Because we have
Absolutely.
found that there are many, many traits that are solely individual, and we don't want to lock anyone into any traits that are ascribed to a certain career level or age bracket. And
Yeah,
yeah, and Shalini, I should also mention that we're careful to distinguish between L&D training and performance management and consulting. And I think that's part of the value that we offer as L&D professionals to our stakeholders, that we consult with them and say, you know what? This may not be a training program. It may be more of a conversation to have with your direct report.
right, right. So, I think that is really essential to positioning the L&D function in as a strategic partner rather than just somebody who's executing orders.
Exactly. Rather than saying, here's what you want, is it really what you need? So we help them distill. Is this performance management, or is it a training, or is it a one-to-one coaching? Frequently,
Right,
we determine that it is a situation where it should be a one-to-one coaching.
right, right. And so, Joan, I think this is the part that really takes the longest time because this is where you really get the foundation right, right? So
Absolutely.
after that, it's a matter of identifying if training is the required solution, then it's a matter of identifying, which modality and so on. So what would you say to L&D professionals, how much of their time and effort should really go into this consultative piece to begin with, vis-a-vis the rest of the entire design and development process?
Absolutely. I would say that, as you said, Shalini, you used the term consultative, and I would say that that is the most strong characteristic that you can develop as a learning and development professional. And that is being able to discern and help them distill what their needs are.
Right, right. So, Joan, I was just wondering, can you share examples of innovative L&D initiatives you've implemented in the past, and what were the results achieved?
Yes, our approach is pretty much following Stephen Covey philosophy, which is begin with the end in mind. And what does that mean?
Right,
That means it's our first step in consulting with our stakeholders to determine what outcomes, what behaviors are you aiming for? What's your current state and where do you want to be? So that's our
right,
foundation in determining any approach. I would say, Shalini, that one of our innovative approaches was forced upon us with the COVID pandemic. So I
right,
had to re-engineer all of our trainings to reflect
right,
having that engaging and connecting experience to people that were isolated, and that was all of us. So making the learning and development programs more connecting, more personal. It was interesting because what was really fun is that we got to meet people's pets, people's spouses, people's children, and someone might see a guitar in someone's home and say, "Oh, do you play guitar?" So we really tried to make that a benefit to connecting with each
right.
other personally. Another innovative approach that we did was with the help of ComLab India, we had a policy program getting recruitment right. And this
Right. I
was the
remember that one.
important, yes, Shalini, you worked with us on this. And this
Yes.
was extremely successful in regionalizing the content and making sure that it was structured in a certain way, a one-to-one and self-paced, so that people could dip in and out as required. So that really went very well. And to add on to that digital program, we developed a role play program in which we were able to practice the theories of recruitment and interviewing with
Hmm.
role play
Interesting.
examples and actual actors.
Interesting.
So that
Wow.
became the part two of our Getting Recruitment Right project with ComLab India.
Right, right. So, Joan, all these were in the during the pandemic or
Yes.
immediately after the pandemic, if I remember correctly. So, when we think of onboarding, typically we expect a face-to-face interaction, an in-classroom presence. So, how did you really overcome the challenges that learners must have felt, at going through a virtual onboarding? Because I don't think it was as common then as it is now.
That's exactly right, Shalini. And we have a wonderful leader in our organization who has taken on onboarding to make it connecting and personal. And her theme is moments that matter.
Yes, I
And
remember
that
that.
is helping, yes, you remember that,
Yes,
helping
yes.
managers determine what are the touch points I should be having with my direct reports. What indicators do I have that maybe they're feeling a little lost? Maybe they'd like a little more connection. And of course, we are moving a little bit towards some in-person meetings. And even that
Right,
one in-person meeting, maybe if it's only once a year, tends to really connect people forever.
right, right. And this is especially interesting because, Joan, you mentioned, that you played a key role, a pivotal role in helping Taylor and Francis transition to this remote working mode.
Yes.
So I'm sure, during this pandemic, all of us learned it was an eye-opener for many of us who could not envision working remotely or training remotely. But yes, I think with very deliberate in-person or face-to-face interactions, you just bring it all together. And
Yes. Shalini, I am so proud that Taylor and Francis didn't just say, okay, here's your laptop, go home, we're closing the office. But we had massive amounts of support in our employee assistance program, in coaching our managers how to take people through this difficult transition, and also to bring out maybe some of the advantage for some people of working from home. So we really have done a lot of hand holding and staying close to the emotions of the people in our organization to really care for them as individuals for whatever they need to transition into this difficult period.
right, right. I think, Joan, one of your passions is performance management, right? So I'm sure
Yes.
there were a lot of lines blurring and, like boundaries
Yes.
were being stretched through this whole transition period. And I think we all probably discovered new ways of working, which actually really worked, perhaps in some ways even better than the old.
Exactly. Shalini, people had as a lining, a silver lining to this cloud that we had, some flexibility in their working hours. I think that most of us, if you ask, we're working a lot longer hours than we did in the past. But the difference is
Yes,
maybe we can, for some individuals, take a break for childcare, take a break for picking up a child from school, and taking that time. Maybe you're a night person, so you might be working more at night rather than the standard, I don't know, 8 to 5, 9 to 4 schedule that was prior in face to face.
right, right. So, Joan, how did remote training, um, digital learning is here to stay. Of course, it
Absolutely.
may have, the pace might have gotten accelerated since the pandemic, but now it's pretty much here to stay. So, what are your views on where it is particularly impactful and where it's not suitable? Because you managed to really accomplish a very successful onboarding, a virtual onboarding. So I'm sure a lot of the preconceived notions that probably were in place went for a toss because we tend to think that certain things are only dealt with in a live classroom. So what are your views? Of course, onboarding is one impactful area where you made a difference and drove results. Are there any other areas where you feel digital learning is particularly impactful?
Absolutely. Well, digital learning, as you said, Shalini, is here to stay, and we welcome it because it has literally opened up worlds of knowledge previously difficult to access. It enables people to access content asynchronously through their own channels in their own time zones. Digital learning as a standalone works extremely well for compliance, policy training. It enables learners to absorb information again at their own pace, and it has important considerations for accessibility, for sight
Right,
impairments, hearing impairments, and that's so necessary. And that's another foundation that we have at Taylor and Francis, a focus on
right,
accessibility for everyone.
right,
Now, so it's great as a standalone, as I said, for straightforward compliance training, for announcing new policies, procedures, for announcing new technologies. And as I mentioned, ComLab India has helped us take a launch into our first digital only compliance program. In addition to standalone value, digital learning helps us with a precursor and pre-work by providing theory and content up front.
right,
Then we follow by the more impactful instructor-led formats. For example, management training, performance management, interpersonal, communication skills, influence and relationship building through discussions where participants share with each other their challenge and successes. So it's not so much that digital learning is not appropriate or impactful in some places, it's where it occurs in the cycle of learning as a pre-work for those communication skills that, of course, have better impact when it's peer learning and people come
right,
together and share. Here's what's worked for me. Here's what I'm stuck with. Those are very
right.
necessary discussions for those type of
Absolutely.
interpersonal programs. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I think increasingly this flipped classroom mode is becoming the norm. You set the
it is.
foundation, you allow people to learn at their own pace and their own time so that you don't waste the valuable face-to-face time, on dealing with some of the foundational aspects, and you reserve it for skill practice, skill building, and as you said, sharing challenges and probably, best practices. So there's a lot of collaborative learning happening in those sessions.
Absolutely. We really value peer learning. And, Shalini, I should also mention that my goal and my passion is creating a safe space for people to come forward and to make sure that they're heard and that they can
Right,
speak out. And many
right,
times someone comes to me and says, you know what? May I have a one-to-one session with you? There's something I'd like to address with you personally about a direct report challenge I'm having. So again, these workshops provide an outlet for sharing peer learning, but also for someone to come forward for one-to-one coaching.
right, right. I think that really expands or broadens our role significantly because, you kind of get into performance consultancy as well, where you're really equipping and enabling people to perform. It may not necessarily related to, a lack of skill or a lack of training, but the more the emotional side of it or the softer side of it. So
Thank you, Shalini. That brings me to an excellent point, and thank you for bringing that up. The emotional connection can be overlooked sometimes. So we have a great management boot camp program and a master class, and we talk about a tune-in tool, and that is questions that you should ask your individual direct reports so that you're managing them in the best way. Because we're all motivated by different things. Do you really know that about your direct reports so you can manage them the most effectively and the most supportively? So that's one of our key focuses.
wow. So do you have some training materials in this space as well, Joan? Or maybe some job aids or some performance support
Absolutely.
materials?
Absolutely. We have on our My Development platform massive amounts of resources that list our calendar of instructor-led training, resources. We have learning pathways. We also access LinkedIn Learning for all of our colleagues. And we
Right,
also are working on some subject matter expert-led programs that we now have. So we are empowering our stakeholders to take on
right,
training for their particular area or region. So that's been very exciting.
right, right. So, Joan, would you say that increasingly L&D managers and L&D leaders are helping transform the organizational culture too? Not just within the L&D space, but directly or maybe indirectly influencing the entire organizational culture? Or would that be a reach to make a statement like that?
Shalini, I think that's a very healthy reach because I think it's a key part of our role. We are to feed up to our senior leaders what's going on in these workshops, in these surveys. So that's very important, Shalini. The point that we like to feed information from, why don't we say, from the field to our senior leaders who are very focused on our overall organizational goals. So yes,
Right.
we have fed that up to our senior leaders, and they are extremely receptive, fortunately, in our organization to listening and to um, aligning or maintaining a positive culture.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, June, coming to the next question, there's so much happening every single day. How do you stay abreast of industry trends and best practices in L&D?
Well, Shalini, you've just hit on the favorite part of my profession, and that is continuous learning, growth mindset. I am a research nerd. And I'm happy
Okay.
to say that my programs and resources to please me have to be the most current, fresh, and with themes that address our very specific needs in the moment or trends that are happening, or better yet, anticipating what the organization may need in the future. So I'm always on LinkedIn. I have over 500 connections in all different areas and all different industries, and I monitor their postings. I belong to certain groups for L&D and also for the publishing industry.
Hmm.
I read all the new insights. There are amazing thought leaders on LinkedIn that I've learned so
Yes.
much from. And they also reach out to me when they have questions, as I reach out to them with questions when I'm building a new program or want a fresh viewpoint. So I want to make sure that my participants gain the value of the most cutting edge, current externally and internally current to suit their needs.
Sounds wonderful. So, I think this community of practice gets
Yes,
stronger and stronger when there is this back and forth, and people are actually really sharing their real life challenges and solutions.
absolutely. Shalini, we have a very interesting generational thing that we've been noticing. I will be leading a workshop, say, on feedback,
Hmm.
supportive feedback, and we have models for it and specific templates that we help empower managers with. And someone will say, I just got promoted to manager, and wow, now I know where my manager got this feedback template from. It's from a course
Okay.
that they took. So I love this
Okay.
generational knowledge. And as you said, community of learning, that we're all on the same page in terms of because I think that's the most critical skill in learning and development. How to give supportive feedback so that you keep your direct reports engaged, motivated, and most of all, having them see the bigger picture of how their role contributes to the larger vision of the organization. And I think that's the key motivator.
Right. Right. And with L&D playing an increasingly important role all across the employee life cycle, not just when it comes to
Yes,
development, I think
that's right.
this is absolutely the way to go.
That's right. And Shalini, to your point about all the whole process, starting with our onboarding, and we do certain things for our new hires that acquaint them with Taylor and Francis ahead of time. and
Mm-hmm.
then take them through the cycle. And those touch points that we mentioned before, the moments that
Right,
matter that you are familiar with at ComLab, helping us through the
right.
recruitment program. And so, mm, so that, yes. So L&D, what you were saying, Shalini, is that L&D is actually present along the whole cycle from new hire onboarding to recruitment to then having that very important, we have check-ins at the 3-month mark with people
Mm-hmm.
and at 6 months. And of course, the annual performance review, which we consider as just a summation of the year. We never want to
Right.
be like those old ways of, oh, I'm nervous and I'm hearing all these things that I should have done. No, that's not the Taylor and Francis way. We have supportive and we not drill on, we enforce and we love to encourage one-to-one conversations that are occurring at least once a week with our direct
Wow.
reports so that we can solve small problems before they become bigger. And that is from the wisdom of Bruce Tulgan, another wonderful author whose insights we have used. Whose insights we have used, yeah.
Okay, that's really
Yeah.
interesting, Joan. So, does any of this feedback, I mean, is there any formal mechanism to capture this feedback to perhaps pass on to L&D?
Yes, we are regularly engaged with onboarding feedback, with the
Mm-hmm.
3-month feedback, and we encourage open conversations with everyone so that they can share with us and feel comfortable sharing with us challenges, things we need to address. Out of this also comes skill gaps. And as you said, Shalini, the important distinction between is this performance management, not a training?
Right, right. Yeah, thank you, Joan. I think it really is heartening to see, so more and more organizations ahead, very progressive and ahead of um, this entire co-ownership aspect of L&D and the business. You co-own certain things and not just leave it to, say, just HR or just leadership, so or just the managers. It's wonderful. Um,
Shalini, that is such an important point because, as you said, it is a partnership. In the old days, HR was the department you went to fill out forms or to have disciplinary processes. As you said, now it is a partnership with L&D and the whole organization. Thank you.
right. So, Joan, how do you perceive the evolving landscape of L&D in the context of, advancing AI tools and technology?
Yes. Shalini, I see it as a seemingly limitless and fascinating new world that we're open to. On a smaller level, just with dipping into some chat GPT and Microsoft Pilot, it will be helping us reduce the amount of time spent on some maybe tedious manual tasks that will
Right.
accelerate us and enable us to spend more time focused on bigger projects.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Joan, a couple of months back, I was actually testing this AI tool, Notebook LM, uh, and that promised a lot of help for research. This AI tool only takes whatever sources you feed it. It doesn't go crawling all over the web to, add its own content. So, and it's meant as a great tool for researchers. So I was really stunned by its capabilities. I was wondering, do you use any AI tools at work at Taylor and Francis, apart from these kind of, the Chat GPT and Copilot? Is there any tool for research, perhaps, or for editing and so on?
Uh, Shalini, I don't have information on that
Okay,
specifically. I'm
right.
sorry. I know that our researcher services and our journals people are currently working with that, but that
Okay, no
wouldn't
worries. Yeah,
Sorry,
we've
sorry.
been, no, 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 no worries, no worries. So, so Joan, one final question. What advice can you share with L&D professionals wanting to grow their careers?
Very good question, Shalini. I would say following in the footsteps, in my footsteps, and the footsteps of many of my colleagues, make LinkedIn your career development partner.
Mm-hmm.
Seek out profiles of L&D professionals and check out what groups they follow, which thought leaders they follow, what certifications do they hold. Also, seek out an L&D mentor, either within your organization or outside of
Mm-hmm.
your organization, and return the favor. We have to say that because we know people are very busy. Mentoring does
Right.
take time, but return the favor by offering to do some research for them or volunteering to be maybe a test subject for a new employee initiative. In
That's really
addition,
interesting.
uh, yes, in addition, I would say get a good solid foundation in the content. And Shalini, you have highlighted throughout this podcast interview so much about the emotional connection with people. So I would suggest that to anyone growing their career in L&D, get to that emotional connection first. Because unless you connect with someone emotionally, the learning doesn't absorb. If someone
Right.
is nervous or someone is intimidated, the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge doesn't enter. So I would say
Right.
for a solid foundation in this type theory, I would recommend books to start with by the best experts in the field. Of course, who do you think I will recommend? Of course, the Taylor and Francis imprint, Routledge.com. These
Mm-hmm.
are my Bibles that I give to everyone seeking to polish their career in learning and development. And I would say, again, in addition to going to Routledge.com, I would say start with the book Adult Learning and Development. It's a gold standard. And another one, The Ways of Learning by Alan Pritchard. So I would say starting with those two on Routledge.com would be a solid investment in learning theory. And again, what you've been referring to, that emotional connection on how people learn.
Right. Thank you so much, Joan. Those were a lot of interesting insights that you've shared today. And, it's very exciting to be in L&D at this point because so many, it's becoming boundaryless,
Yes.
in a sense, our function. And that's exciting.
It is exciting. Before we were just classroom training, right, Shalini? Now look at what we've
Right.
evolved into. Full on consultants, sometimes
Absolutely.
therapists, coaches,
Yeah.
and most of all, an important sounding board, aren't we, Shalini? For
Right.
people that are
Right.
coming that may not know what they want or need or how exactly to empower themselves or direct
Right.
reports. So I love that
Absolutely.
term that we're boundaryless, Shalini.
Thank you.
That's a great
And
term.
Joan, since you mentioned psychological safety, I was just thinking that in a lot of ways, the L&D manager is in a very strong position to listen to the actual concerns of people struggling to perform because they may not be that forthcoming with their first line manager. But when you do a survey among the actual learners, prospective learners, they're likely to really give you the actual challenges that they face, which puts you in a very strong position to really address their pain point and, come up with a solution. So I think that's a very satisfying part of L&D.
Yes, it is. Shalini, that's very satisfying. What surfaces in these workshops is that when people are having this great peer learning and with all our interactive discussions, they are so encouraged to find out, hey, I thought it was just me that had that challenge.
Right.
And then they find out that so many of their peers have the same issue. So that
Right.
brings them to a level of comfort, and they might even share with a peer. And that's, I
Right.
think, the beauty of having these workshops. People are connecting with each other virtually who may not have the chance otherwise. So I think
Right.
that's the purpose of our programs, right, Shalini? We tend to bring together
Right.
people to share their insights, and then they develop relationships after the program. Or at
Right.
least, as you said, they're in a safe space to realize, wow, I can be open. And look, other people have the same issue.
Absolutely.
And on the flip
Absolutely.
side of that, they are able to share tips and successes that other people have done that they can try themselves and apply. So
Right.
I would say, Shalini, what you keep saying, we are so much broader than just learning and development. We are true consultative partners in the organization. And I think you summed it up very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan, once again. And I'm sure listeners have a lot of food for thought. And thank you once again for graciously accepting our invite to be the speaker at this podcast. And listeners, thank you for your time and do stay tuned for our upcoming podcasts. Thank you, Joan, once again.
It is my pleasure. I wish you a wonderful evening, Shalini, and a great evening or morning to everyone listening. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.